So I guess I wanted to start off with a bit about who we are and what we do. So we're all part of the Computational Modelling Systems team within the Centre of Excellence. So our goal is basically to enable better science through the various bits of technology that we all use, so things like the supercomputer up at NCI, the various data services, and as well as help with programming and stuff like that. So scripting things, helping to automate stuff, generally just to make people's lives and experience better and to make the science that's produced in the centre come out faster. So we're a distributed team. We've got 5 core members, so one is at each of the universities. So we've got Paola down at UTAS, Marshall at ANU, Kai at UNSW, who couldn't make it today, and Holger down at Monash, as well as myself, Scott, at University of Melbourne. So each of us has a core knowledge of one bit of the various models that make up the Access Earth System model. So Marshall's main focus is in ocean, Holger's is mainly in the atmosphere, Paola works with data, and Kai works with cable as well as wharf. So we've each got a lot of experience in each of these areas. I also work with the and yeah, so we can help do things like modifying the model. So if you're wanting to do new science with a model and wanting to change things around, set up new models, helping people to get started. So hopefully making that a lot easier and quicker than it might normally be without a support team like ourselves. As well as providing various documentation and making sure that the data you require to doing science is available. One thing we're not is we're not IT, so we deal with the scientific side of computing. We don't deal with installing programs or computer technical support things. We're mainly a level higher up, so we help with programming computers and various languages and stuff like that.
Scott, to clarify that, how would you say we deal with software on, say, Rygen, installing software in Rygen?
So for installing stuff on Rygen, we will help with that a little bit. We've also, of course, got NCI support team is a big help in installing stuff on Rygen as well. So if there's a clamour for a lot of things, for something to be installed that's going to be useful for a lot of people, what we'll do is we'll go and ask the NCI staff, and they'll get things installed for us. If there's not many people wanting to use it, we can install things to a separate area and make them available just within the Centre of Excellence. But we won't do things like installing stuff to your local computer. It has to be sort of a shared thing to benefit the entire centre. So yeah, I hope that's given you a bit of a understanding of what we're trying to do. Is there any questions about that? No?
No, we're all happy.
Okay. So what we're going to do today is go over a few questions that people sent in to Melissa, as well as having a bit of a general question and answer session at the end. So let's just go through some of the questions that were asked. One of the things was asking how best to run things on Rygen. So as you know, you've got the PBS queue system that you submit all your jobs to. So sort of trying to find out what the best way is for working with that. And so you obviously want to get your jobs running through as quickly as possible, and hopefully not consuming excessive amounts of resources beyond what you require. So we've got a few tips for using the queuing system. The first is if you're just trying to set something up, if you're just changing parameters and things like that, it's a good idea to make use of the express queue. So the express queue you add by #PBS-Q express in your queue script, And what that does is the express queue is a set of reserved nodes that only allow you to have a limited number of CPUs, but they get pushed through the queue much faster. So that's helpful for interactive development if you're trying to test something out and making sure it works before you do a full production run on the normal queue. So that allows you to get a lot more feedback in what you're doing. Another pointer to try and get the most out of the PBS system is to, as much as you can, match what resources you're requesting with what you need. So the queue system will try and slot in your job into whatever free space there is available within the Rygen machine. So the less you ask for, the easier time it's going to have. It's going to wait a long time if you're trying to request all of the CPUs on Rygen, because they have to all be free at the same time. If you're requesting a small amount, it'll probably find gaps in here and there between runs. So what I'm talking about there is the number of CPUs as well as the wall time. So you want that block to slot in somewhere quicker, so you want it to be smaller. Of course, if you're running a big job where you're wanting to do a big computation, you'll probably want it. There's no harm in requesting all of the resources that you're going to need for that, but it will take longer to go through the queue. There are times when the demand on Rygen is a lot bigger as well. So the time on Rygen is allocated on a quarter-by-quarter basis. So at the start of each quarter and at the end of each quarter, there's going to be a lot more people trying to use up their time on the system than there is sort of in the middle month or so of the quarter. They've actually got a nice graph to see this effect on. If you go to the NCI website, there's a live stats button. So you can click that and go through, and there's a graph showing how many jobs are on the queue and how many are currently running. So you see spikes during weekdays and dips during the weekends, things like that. So you want to try and make use of those as well. Another question we had was about moving data. So I know a few people at UNSW will do their computations on Rygen, and then later on they'll run in the copy queue job to move data from Rygen up to their own servers. So copy queue is the only queue with network access. So the normal and express queues, you can't actually connect to any machine outside of NCI using those. So copy queues only supposed to be used for small jobs and jobs for manipulating data that don't take up a lot of CPU resources, but do take up a lot of time on the file system. So that's the main way to get data in and out of NCI. So that from there you can copy data from anywhere on Rygen out to an external place. One thing that NCI has recently put up is their cloud virtual machine system. So these machines just sort of virtual instances living at NCI. If you use virtual machines on your own computer, there's sort of a similar thing, but there's dedicated hardware underneath them. These virtual machines are able to access the G data area at NCI. So if you've got data stored on the G data file system, you can also use the virtual machines to access them. So we've got a virtual machine set up for downloading CMIP data, so that goes onto the G data UA8, or error interim rather. So you can use a similar thing if you've got your own G data location. If people are interested, please feel free to drop us an email on the help desk and we can get that set up. Unfortunately, you can't see the short file system or MDSS from the virtual machines. Okay. Any more questions about those? The silence is deafening. I'm actually talking to someone and not just the air.
One thing that I'd like to point out with the queuing system, right? And, if you request CPUs, either you request less than 16 or you get a multiple of 16. So I have this. If you run a coupled model with 48 dedicated CPUs for the and one for Oasis, then you might as well use the remaining 15 for whatever else you want, because you're going to get them anyway.
Yeah, so Raijin works in nodes of 16 cores, so it will allocate a node to you if you're getting more than 16 CPUs. So you can make use of the whole thing. Okay. There were a few questions about the NCI data store and pipeline system. Paola, do you want to go over that? Do we have Paola on?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I just muted my microphone before.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure in the email I received. The question isn't very specific, so I don't know if someone wants to, if the person who put in the question, which was what's the status of the data store at NCI, can be a bit more specific about what they want to know.
Would you like to just go over what data stores we have?
Yep. Okay. So, we started pretty much maybe a couple of years ago collecting the error entering dataset, which is available, like Scott was saying before, under the UA project, and it's stored on G data. That means that it's actually stored on disk rather than on tape like MDSS. And we keep that updated. At the moment, the ECNWS has released until February 2014, this year, and we're pretty much on track. Recently, we updated the different array entering as a lot of variables, and that are divided in different levels, which could be model level, pressure level, potential temperature, potential verticity level, and so on. And recently we updated all of these to the highest available resolution, which is 0.75 degrees both for latitude and longitude. And what we do is basically we download them from the ECNWS as grid. So as a grid data set, we get all the variables that are available, and then we convert selected variables to netcdf monthly files. So basically we got every variable, a file for each variable each month. I'm talking about the data is put out every 6 hours. We also have monthly, two different kinds of monthly averages, but they're not quite up to date, mostly because no one seems to be using them at the moment, so they're less priority. We also have the UTC, that I think is year or tropical cyclone. I can never really quite remember exactly what it stands for, which is another reanalysis from the ECNWS. We got the pressure level for that one. That is an even higher resolution, but for a shorter period. I forgot to say the era entering starts in 1979, and this one instead, it was just an experiment which lasted about 1.5 years between May 2008 till the start of 2010. Again, we've done the same thing, download the grid data and then convert it to NetCDF. And I think the resolution there is 0.12 degrees, both in lat and long. So it's a lot more, it's a lot higher resolution. Other data sets we actively download the CMS5 data sets, which are stored as well under G-data, but that's under the US6 code. And we're not the only one downloading them. Basically, there is this effort to download it in the same way together with the COCAR and the Bureau. And so normally, if you need the data, you should send me a request. I can tell you what's already available, and I can download for you what's not there yet. And this is the best way to go because, like at the moment, we got, for example, 250 terabytes. You know, overall CMS5 is going to come up to about 5 petabytes. So we have absolutely to avoid replicas. So this is the thing in which we are more involved, but we also have a few extra data sets that we downloaded, like the CleanDex, that are index derived from the CMS5, so mostly temperature, maximum and minimum, and things like that. Ops4Meet, that in a way is part of CMS5, which is observational data sets regraded in a form that allows to compare more easily with the CMS5. So again, we got just a subset of them, but we're looking into downloading more. And then there is the cable repository that we are working to put as well into the to transfer to G-data, and it's going to become one of the climate data set collections. Hosted by NCI, and at the moment we're working, so that's mostly is the data sets used as a forcing for the cable model, but it's going to be as well a set of data sets used for validation of the cable model. Other data sets I can think, well, there is the Office data set that is been transferred from Japan, so that's an ocean reanalysis. Is that correct, Marshall? Or?
Yeah, the OFES data set.
Yeah, and that is hosted as well under G-data. At the moment, I think anyone which is in the ocean group, so in B35, has access to these data sets. So anyone in theory can ask to be added to the group. And I can't remember exactly what I think that's RQ5 or something like that, but if you're interested, just send me an email and I'll give you instruction on how to get access to. And all of these data sets should be soon put onto a proper database. So that means that rather than just being on the file system, they're going to be available through something like Threads, which I don't know if you might or not might be familiar with. They just like web-based catalog for the data. And once you got the data onto this database, we can provide extra service to actually discover the data, access, see what metadata is, and eventually maybe even allow something like OpenDAT, which is basically allows you to use a URL to actually get the data, to subset it and get the amount of data that you need. So this is all just happening now at NCI. It's getting much more organized to manage the data. They have a data manager on board. So hopefully it will happen in the next few months, but it's really more for them to say. Once we got that, one of the first services we might offer is this web portal which is called Ramada, that we're trialing on a cloud at the moment, and which should help as well people to attach comments to the data or load graphics and exchange, comments and things, which I think particularly for the CMS part is very important, because there's a lot of uncertainty around the validity of the data sets, and so it will be good to have some tool that allows people to know immediately before they're trying to use the data that there might be some issue with the data. I don't know if that covers.
Yeah, so all of these data sets are available on NCI for people to use. They're basically provided so people don't have to download them themselves. It's all just there waiting for you, which is hopefully a big help. If you want to read more about it, we do have some documentation up on our wiki, which you can get to from the Centre of Excellence homepage and going to the CMS tab, or you can just search for Climate CMS on Google and we should show up as one of the top links with our wiki. Did anyone want to ask anything about the data sets and getting data, asking for data to be downloaded? Things like that?
Just wanted to ask about the threads thing. So that time scale of a few months, does that mean a few months that they're going to start setting it up, or is it going to be done in a few months?
Well, it's hard to say. They don't really give us a timeline either. So what I know is that they started putting in data management plans, and they kept on asking me which kind of services do we want with the data. Now, as far as I know, putting on threads in itself, and I think some of these other things, it's very easy. It could take an afternoon. The problem is, that at that level, and for a lot of more data sets, you want to set it up, once, and, having it in a reliable way, and that depends on them. And I think the main issue here is really that data has been a bit, there's been issues with input-output and other things. But that's just my, very noisy now. That's just my opinion.
Sorry, I've just switched over.
Yeah, sorry. That's just my opinion. Until the issue with the Lustre system and with data particularly don't get solved, I don't think they're gonna have something extra which, could just increase the amount of traffic to the file system itself. So I don't think it's gonna happen in a month's time, maybe more, 2-3 months time, I don't know. It's hard to say.
It would be really awesome to have all that stuff about errors and so forth found in different versions of the CMS 5 data.
Yeah, I guess we could maybe trial to start that. The problem is that at the moment, like Scott was saying, and I don't know if that's actually something changed and I'm not aware of it, but Scott was saying about we are able to mount G-data onto the cloud, onto a VM. That's possible, but for example, it's not possible at the moment for the CMS 5 data, and I think that's just because they have to work out how to, respect all the licensing and so on. So at the moment, we couldn't mount USC onto that, and I'm not quite sure when that's going to happen, because it's one of these things that we couldn't get a straight answer from. But I don't know if Scott has any news that I'm not aware of about that. No? Hello, Scott?
Oh, sorry, I've just been having a bit of trouble. What were you asking, sorry?
Just if it was, like you were saying, we can mount G-data onto cloud, but we couldn't do that for USC. And as far as I know, they haven't given us an answer, so I don't know if you know anything.
Yeah, NCI have basically just been putting it off while they work out some of these data cataloging issues. But if we have people wanting to start using it, we can certainly press them more to get it set up.
I guess I'm a bit confused about the benefits of having a virtual machine. Under what circumstances would I use the virtual machine rather than just RayGem, for example?
It lets you do things like set up cron jobs, which NCI won't let you do on RayGen, mainly because it's a shared system and they don't want to be affecting other people using it. But for things like one-off, you're just copying something from your file system. I mean, it's fine, just use the RayGen logon node. It also lets you do things like set up web servers. So if we wanted to set up a web view of all of our data, we could do that on the virtual machine. It's mostly a back-end sort of implementation detail rather than something you need to directly worry about.
Okay.
Yeah, so to specify, in this case, Ramada will run on a virtual machine, but you wouldn't have anything to do with that. You will just access it through the web.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, were there any other questions about data?
Yeah, actually I have one. So a long-running thread has been if we can host on NCI post-process files from the CMS5 data. Has there been any kind of movement or progress on that? Do we have any space for having some shared area where post-process variables can be stored?
Okay, I'll answer. Basically, there is. One of the things is that up to now, NCI has always seen that in relation to the pipeline output. So I think there is some that is being given under the R87 project, which is part of Cyro. Well, it's not, because they assume that people will do the post-processing of the CMS5 through the pipeline of what's going to be the primary virtual laboratory, which should start in the next couple of months, I think, should be made available. And so there is some storage linked to this project. And then I guess in general we do have some extra G data storage which is available for the whole COE. So again, it's not quite clear yet how much it is and how much we meant to use it and for what. It's all kind of thing that we are sorting out in NCI at the moment. But we could use part of the storage, at least as a temporary.
Okay, so there's no procedure in place yet for submitting data to that?
Not unless, well, not for that one, but for the CMS5, for post-process CMS5, would be better if it was together with a COCA, with a bigger community of CMS5 users, rather than just inside COE thing. Yeah. And that kind of space is attached to the primary weather laboratory.
Okay.
And because they haven't quite released it yet, it's not quite clear.
Okay.
The procedure. So.
Okay. I guess if there's no other questions, we'll move on to a few Python questions that Marshall was going to answer.
Yeah, I guess these are all from Chris, so feel free to ask them or interrupt them as you wish, Chris.
Feel free to say that you don't want to deal with them or they're not relevant, so I think that's an acceptable answer.
Yeah, I mean, there's some, maybe some go into more detail than is appropriate, but I'm happy to just sort of go over them. I guess first one you had was about doing imports and whether or not one should import live modules inside functions and stuff. And I can say no, you should import them at the beginning of your scripts. And the reason I say that is because there's an official style guide for Python. PEP8 is sort of it was a proposal that's sort of become the style guide. And that probably answers a lot of questions one has about a good way to do stuff. And one of the points they make in there is you should always list the things you need, the libraries you need at the very beginning, even if you only need them for a particular function or class. So that would be how one would go about doing that. I think I'll move on. You also had a question about profiling your scripts, is that right?
Yeah, particularly in terms of memory.
Yeah,
In a very
so what have you...
way.
This was a bit new to me myself. What have you found since asking that? Have you tried anything out?
I have in the past done quite a few things at a time, and I tend to just look at, that Linux thing that tells you your resource usage.
Yeah, okay. So I did look into one called Memory Profiler, appropriately named. I don't know if you've tried it out. I tried it out today. It works quite nicely. Basically, you install this module, or you just make it, it's just the file. You need to have it accessible however you do that in your environment. And you put a little decorator above the function you want to test. So there's more instructions there, but it looks really nice. It tells you basically the amount, how your memory's changed at each line in your program. It says this line bumped it up by that, or dropped it down by another, and I tried it out today. It seems quite nice.
Okay.
And it's actually designed to resemble another one I've used called Line Profiler, which tells you how much time you're spending on each line in your code. So that's another useful one I've found.
So this was available just as a standard Python module on PyPy?
That's right. It's on PyPy, or you can do a Python setup install. However you want to get to it. It's probably available in a lot of distribution packages too, on Linux. But yeah, it looked quite easy to use. I would definitely give it a try. So you don't have to be running top or something. Another question was about logging. This one I didn't know. I had to contact NCI. This was about people would, if you wanted to use the logging module but pipe the output to email. Is that right?
Yeah.
So basically the answer is you can do it, but number one, you have to set up an SMTP handler in the logger. Number two is you need to find an SMTP server that will handle that email for you, because NCI is not doing it.
Yeah,
so I don't know if this... Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, so is this something you would want to do on Rygen, or something you'd want to do on your own machine?
No, just on the UNSW machine. I don't actually use it.
Yeah, okay, so I don't know the particular restrictions of the machines you work on. But if you can get you can use an external SMTP server to... It's basically, if you look up SMTP handlers for the logging module, there's little snippets of code that will show you how to do that. But I guess the answer is yes, it can be done, sort of. But you might need a little bit extra support on that, or your own support. Yeah, and there was one about standard out, but I think we'll maybe talk about that elsewhere. And there was another one about garbage collection, and I guess this is about using memory efficiently.
Yeah, basically. And just knowing when things die, and maybe I should be wrapping things in classes or functions so that they die once it's done, basically. Because I noticed sometimes Python seems to hold on to things, and I don't want it to. Not really sure.
Yeah, okay, well, there's not a lot, yeah, I mean, in terms of how much memory the various constructs that you use take up, that's a complicated answer. I mean, even import statements will take up memory. In terms of how it uses it, sorry?
Like, I mean, in terms of storing big arrays, that are a couple of gigabytes. Like
you're kind of lucky. Okay, so I guess NumPy arrays, right?
Well, Panda ones, but I think they live in NumPy. So.
Yeah, so I think that they use NumPy. Yeah, that's pretty much those are direct allocations. So they take up the space that they take, and so once you instantiate them, they take up the memory. And if the code realizes that they're not going to be used anymore, the reference counter will drop, and if that drops to 0, it will remove it. The garbage collector will remove it. But
Right.
you can push it along a little bit with the DEL statements. That will free up your memory quite a lot. But in terms of how does it decide to do it? Well, it reference counts. It keeps track of how many times it appears as it cycles down your code. And once that goes to 0, it takes it out. And it does a bit of forwarding on that, but I don't know the details.
Right. So, but it must look ahead in time in some sense, right? If it's counting references.
I think loops do. I think the PYC, so it does a bit of compilation. I think it uses it, but I don't know.
Yeah, generally it will collect garbage once a function goes out of scope and things like that. So
yeah.
At the end of the function it will decrement all the reference counts of the variables that are referenced in that function.
Right.
Yeah, so the function case is easy. As for the big file, the top level namespace, I'm not quite so sure. But I wouldn't bet on looking ahead.
But anyway, if I do a del statement, that will definitely dump it.
Yes, the del statement is a very explicit way of saying I don't need this anymore. And I have had times when I've gone to the end of a loop, gone back to the loop, and I know it's kept that prior instance, even though I know it's about to be overwritten. There will be brief windows where there'll be 2 versions of a variable in memory, and then after it does a few more steps, the garbage collector will remove it. So yeah, the DEL statement is often essential when you're taking up the whole memory. Yeah, so I guess the last one was about reusability testing and stuff. I'm not quite sure. Are you talking about kind of just unit testing and stuff? Is that?
Yeah, basically. It's just the idea that I'd like to be writing things that are a bit more general, but the concern is that if they get used in multiple places, then how do I ensure that those multiple uses remain working when I make little changes?
Well, I use the unit test module for that. I understand unit tests are not always easy to put together. Sometimes it's hard to abstract what you want to do. But when I'm able to do that, I use the unit test module, and you basically run an independent script. And inside there, you construct your various tests as various functions, and then you can put your data in there, or you can load your data from files. I think it's more than I could really say in a question like that, how to do that. Holger uses another one called doctest, which is quite useful. But yeah, I mean, I would try to see, get used to the practice of unit testing at least. That might help you get somewhere.
May I quickly say a few things about this? The way I have read your question is that you basically have a function and you use that function several different places, and you wonder if you change the function, will it have any impact on the other programs that use that function? And I think it's hard to do that automatically, because that function will not know which other programs will use it. What I would do is, when you create a function, make a list of test cases for it, and then always assume, then you can run these test cases against it, and then you know that your function works in this specific way. And every time you implement, you want to use that function, make sure that the use that you do is covered by these test cases. And then you can either, well, if it isn't, then you can add a new test case. You add the new test case to it and implement that function. But because no one else has, because the test case hasn't been in before, you know that none of the other programs use it in this way. And if your new idea crashes one of the test cases, then you know you can't use then you know you can't use that. You have to do something else. I'm very generic at the moment. Let's say you have a function that tests if a number is at the power of 3. So you write test cases for 1, 3, 9, and a few non-powers of 3, like 5 or so. And then your routine covers them all. Now next time you want to maybe have it in such a way that it also returns true if you supply it with -3. So you look at the test case and you see, well, I haven't used negative numbers before, so apparently I haven't used negative numbers before. So then you can say, okay, this power of 3 -3 should return true. You adapt your function in that sense that it will return true at -3, and you have at least some confidence that it doesn't interfere with anything else. The other thing is, if you want to be really thorough, then you yourself have to keep a list of all the programs that use that, and whenever you change it, run these other programs test case again, which might be a lot more difficult. But yeah, I would certainly try to get a separation of concerns. If you have a function that implements one thing, or that works in one way, and then you always assume that this function works in this particular way. And if you optimize it, if you have a new idea how to make it fast or something, you can update it, but if it doesn't change the behavior, the outside behavior, then it's still okay.
Yeah, you can sort of go as simple or as complex as you like with testing. So you could just have known inputs and outputs for one of your scripts and just check that that's always working, or you can use these full unit testing frameworks. Sort of it's up to you how confident you want to be in your code. Also, always use version control, so you can always go back to that previous state if you find out that things are breaking. Is always helpful, as well as making sure that each of your functions isn't trying to do too much. So you're not trying to test too much about these functions. They should all be sort of self-contained. So one function to open a file, one function to get the variables from that file, then each of your analysis types are separate functions as well. Makes testing a fair bit easier. Okay, did we have any other questions sort of about Python programming or things like that? Chris, I hope we answered some of your questions.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Okay. I guess those were the questions that got sent in to us. I guess we'll open it up to the floor if anyone wants to ask us stuff. Remember, you can always ask us things via the Climate Help Desk, climate_help@nf.nci.org.au. There's also a link to that on the Centre of Excellence homepage.